I first got into the Cayce material when I was about 16. We had a marine biology professor named Vicki Lear who was talking to us about the lost city of Atlantis, and she told us about the philosophies from Plato and the stories. And she also mentioned the Cayce readings. And for about 2 years, she would constantly refer the Cayce readings. And I just thought it was fascinating that somebody could access these readings and have information from the Akasha. And so from about 16 and onward, I just fell in, just like everybody else, into this world of greater awakening, greater knowledge, understanding of my own family dynamics. And it was almost like a beacon for how to be the best version of myself that I could possibly be. And I like to think of Edgar Cayce as like a father figure to me. I didn't really have one growing up. My dad wasn't there. So when you have somebody who commits themselves to this life of service and love and kindness and, you know, self-effacement and humility and searching for God, I felt, wow, you know, this is somebody that I want to emulate. This is somebody that I want to be like. And, you know, as the readings say, it's that concept of the ideal. And so this concept of the ideal, whatever that might be, hope, love, joy, peace, and, you know, attuning to those things has definitely helped me in my life. And when I had my daughter, I got a severe case of postpartum depression to the point where I understood why people commit suicide. And, you know, I lived in the French Alps at the time. I had this beautiful panoramic apartment and the mountains were snowy and I had this beautiful newborn baby. And I felt completely disconnected from the world. I just couldn't feel anything. I felt like I was in four walls and the world was happening around me, but I was inside and I was dead. And I was watching it, but I felt nothing. And the readings and the materials were almost like this little string that tugged me along and got me out of that postpartum depression and helped me to get the direction that I needed to survive, to live, and gave me the will to live. And it wasn't until I had met a psychic who told me, you're going to do what I do, but you'll do it in California, and you're going to read celebrities and do all these things. I did not believe her. I did not think that that was real. I just kind of took it as like a, sure, okay, whatever you say. But lo and behold, the bridge of incidences occurred, and I found myself here in San Diego, and my intuitive abilities started to get stronger and stronger and stronger. Looking back, I realized that was a function of my desire to know who is God, what is God, where is God. The curiosity inside of me started to awaken these faculties of my own being, and I started to perceive dimensions of thought and dimensions of feeling that I had never done so before. And she was right. I started reading celebrities, professional athletes, you know, Olympians, their families, people on TV, comedy writers, and started to do hypnosis and hypnotherapy and regression. And every single time, the material that would come forward was exactly like what was in the readings. So the more I did the practical work in helping people in their lives, the more I realized, okay, not only is this information, you know, something that somebody committed to themselves to bring through for us, that's available to us, but all of us are living it, all of us are breathing it, all of us are expressing it, but we're just not aware of it until a certain point where you realize, like the Bible being this journey of our soul, I am on this inevitable journey towards oneness. I'm knowing myself and I'm knowing myself with God. So that was the exciting part of integrating the material and the truth. The truth really is what it is, integrating the truth that the readings had provided into my life, not only to save myself from destruction, ultimately, to helping other people in their careers, all the way from, you know, the Joyce Chiefs of Staff, all the way down to bringing this information to the world. It was empowering because you're helping people learn the truth by sharing what's in the material, and they're taking it, applying it to their lives, and then they're telling other people about it. So in a weird way, I feel like I'm like a disciple, but I'm not in like the church of Edgar Cayce, but I feel that I'm, you know, a part of this soul group that feels a responsibility of living the material and being a steward of the material, and empowering other people to do the same thing for generations to come. So I want to tell you one story before I get into the meat of what John wanted me to ask, was my story of going to Chichen, Itza, which I have a picture behind me. You can see, there I am with my family. We pulled our children out of private school because we decided to use those funds to take them around the world and show them ancient sites and go through the jungle and, you know, swim in cenotes and meet the people of the world and learn their language, because that's the only way you're really ever going to learn anything, is by getting out there and meeting people. And so I took my kids to Cancun and we went to Chichen Itza. And the morning that I got up to go to Chichen Itza, I felt this impending sense of doom. That was coming towards me, or maybe even flowing out of me. I'm not quite sure how to articulate that. And the closer and closer and closer we got to Chichen Itza by bus, which is quite a long journey, I just started to feel unwell and emotional, and wanted to just peel my skin off and bust out, because I could start feeling, as the psychic medium, the impressions of Chichen Itza and the Yucatan. And so when we got to Chichen Itza off the bus and we make it through this throng of people, I'm already starting to see spirits walking around, and I can already see them, and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to avoid this. I'm not going to live a regular life today. Today is going to be the journey of spiritual dimensions, and past life memories, if you will. So I get into Chichen Itza and we're with a guide, and she's telling us, you know, what history says, what formal science says, and formal archaeology, and I'm going along, but I'm starting to feel the presence. I'm starting to see people, and I realize, okay, something's happening. So I get away from the group. I walk off kind of into the shade where all the merchants are, and I just break down. I'm holding on to a rail of a fence. I'm looking at this incredible, massive, mysterious, ancient site, and I am sobbing and crying. And my husband, he took a picture of me because he wanted to show that what my experience was real and what I go through as a medium when I go to a place or when I meet people. And I'm sobbing because all of a sudden I'm getting flashes of thousands of souls at once. I'm feeling the presence of 30,000 souls at Chichen Itza, and they're showing me that it was one of the landing sites of the sinking of Atlantis. That what Edgar Cayce had said in the readings was not just a story or conjecture. No, they're showing me. I'm experiencing it. And as he described it, I'm seeing it. 30,000 souls on boats of various kinds making their way, because Atlantis is gone. I want you to imagine that feeling that your entire civilization is gone. No more Beatles, no more violins, no more recipes, no more I Love Lucy, no more anything. It's all gone. Everything, your history, everything you've ever worked for has disappeared. And that sense of devastation, of that loss of a whole civilization, a people, a culture, a language has just disappeared. And it's not your fault, because for some odd reason, you managed to survive. These people were here and they didn't understand, why did we survive and why did everyone die? And they're making me feel this loss, this confusion, this feeling of, oh my God, we have to start over. And so they're showing me in a panic going, who knows architecture, who knows how to purify water, who knows how to farm, who's a doctor, and everyone's scrambling just to figure out how are we going to make a makeshift civilization. And they're showing me all this information, how they built things, how long it took to build Chichen Itza. For me, it was about 100 years. What they put inside, they showed, children and spirits were showing me corridors on the outside lower to the actual pyramid that you see, and you could walk around and go in places. And they gave me all this information of the lake and all these homes that they had built, similar to the style of the Japanese, where they didn't have screws and metal because it's all gone. So they learned how to construct buildings, multi-story buildings out of joints, out of wood. So I'm seeing this evolution of this people over years as well, over how many periods of culture, you know, the Atlanteans, and then merging with the people from the other side of the continent. The Moos, and not the Moos, but the Olmecs and the Toltecs and these other cultures. And they're coming in, and how the site of Chichen Itza is evolving over hundreds, thousands of years. And that this place was one of these places where it was the rebirth of a civilization that, for me, was like, oh, this is not just oh, if you misuse, you know, and commit malpractice, spiritual malpractice, and, you know, the sons of Belial, and really being selfish and self-centered, then this bad things will happen. No, they showed me, I saw it, it was real. And so I felt that devastation, but I also saw, and I felt this sense of people starting to learn to live again, and to live in the presence, and to reorient their attention towards civilization building, culture, communication, collaboration, and all of these ideas to rebuild a society and a civilization and reconnecting again. And they showed me what Atlantis looked like from the sky, and their flying vessels that they didn't have anymore because they didn't have the supplies. But it was quite an experience to go to a site and just feel the memories and the souls connected to a place, but then also to realize, I mean, I really went back to my hotel and I just Googled the readings to see that everything that I had seen was exactly as the material had shown it, that this wasn't just a fantasy, this wasn't a story, this wasn't made up. No, this was an event and it really happened. This is our history. We must learn from it so we don't repeat it again in our own hearts, in our own homes, in our civilization, and our world. So that was the first time I really felt something of a global, massive scale. Oh, how do I become closer to God? This is like, we are a whole civilization, and we must work together and collaborate together in order to create a sense of oneness on this planet, which I feel is inevitable. I don't think that anybody could ever deny it, denounce it, avoid it. I do believe that love and spirit will always prevail. But it is one of those things that we must remember, that God is the conscious activity, you know, of our very being, and that we must turn our attention and our focus on that, so we can then be the instruments of peace and love on this planet. So for the last few minutes, I just have a really short message on this concept of allowing yourself to let spirit move through you, rather than this concept of, oh, please God, help me, heal me, give me more money, all of these things. You know, Joel Goldsmith once said, you know, you can't use God. God uses you. You have to surrender yourself to allow spirit to be an instrument of love, the instrument of intelligence, the instrument of peace. And in the process of doing so, you physically and viscerally feel that sense of love and wholeness and oneness through that process. That's the only way that we can take what is abstract knowledge into living it and being it, so people can feel it and experience it. So I just have one little story from that, and it's a very simple one. But one day I was studying, I'm wrapping up my final year of law school, and I was at my desk, and all of a sudden, I just feel almost like a lightning bolt, this vibration, this earthquake of energy inside of me. And I just had to get up. I had to get up and I had to go for a walk. So I just got myself in a hurry and I walked towards my door, and I was so kind of really curt with my husband. And I said, I'm going for a walk. Are you coming or what? And I remember paying attention. I go, why are you talking to your husband like that? He didn't do anything, but he just looked at me and he said, okay. He got his shoes on and we went for a walk. So we went for a walk up the street and around the corner. And I had this urge to just turn around and go back down the street. And as we were going back down the street, I looked to my left down my street and I see a man collapse, boom, right on the ground on the concrete. And around him are a few homeless women that I know in the neighborhood. And they're just circling him. And all of a sudden they get scared and they just start to just disperse. And my husband and I go down and we look at this man and he's overdosing on drugs. And he says, Leslie, you need to call 911. So my husband, he actually starts to provide him CPR. And I call 911, I stand on the side of the road where I knew that the fire department would come and see me, and I'm waiting, and my husband's providing chest compressions. For some miracle, he managed to get this guy to be conscious again because he lost all breath. He wasn't breathing, he was dying. The firemen came, they saw that my husband successfully resuscitated him. And then the police people came, and the one police officer lady offered him some Narcan, but he didn't want it. But she said to him, you almost died. No, I don't want it. He walked 100 feet trying to stumble, and then he collapsed. And of course, they took him to the hospital. And as my husband and I are watching all this happen, he looks at me and he says, it's so funny because a couple of weeks ago, I watched a YouTube video on how to give CPR. I didn't know why I was doing it, but I did it. And that moment, I realized the truth of what Joel Goldsmith and the readings say is that you can't use God. God uses you. But the only choice we have is to make a willing decision to say yes to that, to allow that, to be moved by that. Because if we don't, we create all sorts of malpractice because we want to manifest and we want to be this and we want to be that. And you can't. It always ends up being our will, and we meet the limitations of our will. We meet the limitations of our own knowledge. We meet the limitations of our own capacities. And through Spirit, through God, through our oneness, through all, we are able to accomplish everything that we're supposed to accomplish, the will of God, because we're all part of that. And everything we do is part of that greater purpose for all of us. So that's ultimately the story I want to tell. I wanted to keep it nice and tight, something to take away, something to retell your friends. But on the theme of friendship, my final thought with that before I take any questions you might have is about friendship. And one of the most amazing things I like to think about when I'm in my car and I'm in traffic and I see all these people, and I think, wow, there are people out there in the world I haven't even met yet, and they love me and they're waiting for me and they're hoping that I come into their experience, into their lives, and I love them. And I'm waiting for them, and they're going to come into my life too. And that feeling of someone is waiting for me makes me feel very motivated, makes me feel excited. And so my final thought with that is when you think about all the places that you'll go in life and hereafter, don't just think about where you go, but ask yourself, who's going to meet me there? And that's a great question. Who's going to meet me there? So thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Thank you. That's the same feeling I have. When I go on those long road trips to a retreat or something, who am I going to meet there? And then one day I met you.
Yes. Yeah, you're welcome. I see Chaya saying thank you. What a paradigm shift. Thank you so much. Oh, you're welcome. And thank you, Dolly.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your website?
Oh, yes. I have a website. I have a few, but my author website is just lesliejuvin-acker.com. And I'll send the link right now for my Journey of Purpose with Edgar Cayce. It's right into the chat. And I share my story there. And of course, anyone can email me at officialleslieink@gmail.com to talk about the material. And I love to talk about it. I get super excited. As you can see, I can't help it. I think it's like one of the top subjects in my entire life that I act almost like a buffoon because it's just so much fun. It's like going to Disney.